Monday, let's go. Ho! Out here making left turns. Hey, last week's episode, Monday, I asked the question, will you be ready when the COVID crisis subsides? If I said that right. The dust settles, etc., etc. Will you be poised to take the land and to gain ground and gain momentum? And what I want to say today is, are we going to be able to, I'll say it this way. I heard this. Tough times don't last, tough people do. Are you going to be able to accept the challenge and the struggles that we're dealing with now to get through, but also having the wisdom on the back end to set your face like a flint and take the possible punishment that's going to come on the other side of this with, who knows, our supply lines concerning our food being disrupted, possibly even more massive unemployment that's more long lasting than just right now. There's a lot of places that have laid people off for a short term. They've promised that they're going to come back once things get up and running. That may or may not be true. But right now we're in a situation as a nation and as a people where it's very difficult. Obviously, it's people have died. It's tragic. But are we going to position ourselves to be on the back end to be successful on the other side of it? And are we also going to choose to be tough, not only through this right now, but also on the other side? Because once this all subsides, the aftermath, the effect of the choices that we as people and our politicians have made, that bill will come due after we're back up and running or getting back up and running. And that's somewhat frightening, but the way that I am, I want to know the threat, the challenge, the villain, the situation that lies before me. I don't want it to be sugar-coated. I don't want people to lie to me and or spin things to me about what is happening. I want to know the cold, hard facts of what's happening. Here's a good example. A fellow businessman in town used me to mow his yard, one of his clients' yards. And he told me, hey, it's about 1.5 acres. And I need you to get out there and get it done. Said, okay, no problem. Got out there. I was literally looking at 4 acres. 4 acres of yard that needed to be mowed, that hadn't been mowed in probably 2 or 3 weeks, that was about 4 inches tall. So I texted him and said, hey, it doesn't behoove you to not be blunt, honest with me about what you need and what you're doing. It doesn't build trust with me. He could have told me, hey, Zach, this is a big yard and I don't really want to do it today because I got something else going on. I can only afford to pay $100. Is that something you're willing to do? I would have said yes. I would have done it for 100. I didn't weed whack. He's got to go back out there and do it. But the point is, when you're in a situation where you don't know what's going on, you've eventually been set up, or not eventually, you've essentially been set up to where you're more exposed to problems that could be that much more dire. So that's why it's important for me as a person to always know the cold, hard truth in the cold light of day so that I can be as prepared as possible. And the cold, hard truth is, even once we get out of the COVID crisis, as far as the self-isolation, the quarantine, et cetera, there's still another fight on the other side of this, which is really getting back up and running. And are you going to choose to be a successful and vibrant entrepreneur who will find a way to make it through the hard time and or the hard season? Now, again, whether you're like a good friend of mine who's an HVAC guy, all he does is work. He's interested he likes being in a union. He's not interested in doing side work. He's just going to do his thing. Whether you're like him or you're like me and you're trying to run a business, you're trying to start other businesses, is irrelevant. Are you going to have the mindset of an entrepreneur where you're going to be able to play the game and be somewhat fluid with what's happening to have the greatest outcome and level of success for yourself as well as for your wife and children or for your husband and children? This is very important. This is huge. And I can't wait to get on the other side of this. I can't wait to finally start interviewing people. I have a lot of people lined up. Obviously, right now we're not doing anything because of the self-imposed social distancing and obviously the quarantining, self-quarantine, I don't know. Whatever the case may be. But on the other side of this, not only are we going to do we need to be poised to take the land and be successful, but also too, on the other side of this, guys, in some ways, it could get much worse before it gets better, even once we start to take those steps back towards it getting better. And that's a tough reality. So choose today to take the land. Choose today to move forward in strength and in power, and use your mind, use the creativity that's in you. When we use our creativity, we tap into a force that's otherworldly, that isn't us. It supersedes us, and it permeates and it permeates all things, and it moves above and through and around all things at one time. So find a way to think differently, and also too to just prepare yourself for the possible tough road ahead. I did a video some time ago about quantitative easing. They're printing more money, guys. The Fed and the stock market are intertwined in their insanity. And all the while they are plunging us and our children and our children's children towards the precipice of bankruptcy and massive inflation. Inflation that isn't unlike what we saw in Venezuela when the oil prices plummeted and they were no longer able to keep paying for the services that they set aside for their people via tax revenue. Their inflation went through the roof. That wasn't the only reason why, but that was part of it. So, times could get harder. Are we going to take the land? Are we going to be positioned to win, or are we instead going to be defeated and have our names erased from history? It's up to you. As for me and my house, we're going to kick some ass.